Have you been trying to study for an exam and you just can't because you're so tired? How do you study for it when you're that tired? When you feel like you can't keep your eyes open and your head's nodding down, what do you do? Today, hopefully I can give you some tips to help you study even when you're the most tired you have ever been in your entire life. I'm going to be using some of the principles from the book by James Clear called Atomic Habits. I think this book is a book that everybody should read, especially if you're in college, but I think it's a great rite of passage into adulthood if you're a young adult, or even getting into as an older adult. I think that it has a lot of principles that are very applicable to everyday life, whether it's your job, school, a hobby, your business, anything really. So the first tip that I have is to make it easy or reduce the friction, as James Clear puts it. So essentially what you want to do is you just set up your study materials in advance. So you have your textbook ready, your notes ready, your lectures ready, your flashcards ready, and you want them out so whenever you come home from a day of class, you have it right there on your desk and you can sit down, open up, and get started. You don't want to have to be digging around looking for it, trying to figure out what exactly you need to study. You should have that already set in stone, ready to go. And also, you want to start with smaller tasks. So instead of saying, I'm going to study this entire chapter, or I'm going to study this for this entire exam, all 4 chapters, you'll start with a small task or a small goal, which could be, I will learn this PowerPoint slide, or I will read this one page from a textbook. In this way, the task of actually studying for your exam or studying the entire chapter is a lot less daunting. It's not as big, it's a smaller thing that you can tackle little by little. And also, to reduce friction of studying, you can also create reminders to study, or you can schedule your study sessions in advance. Another concept that James Clear outlines in the book is habit stacking, which is anchoring a habit with another habit that's already a part of your day. So for this example, studying will be the habit that you're trying to introduce into your routine. And a lot of people, every morning, they have a cup of coffee. So if every time that you have your cup of coffee in the morning, you study for an hour after you get your cup of coffee, that way from now on, when you wake up and you have your coffee, you associate studying with that coffee. My example is that whenever I was in anatomy and physiology, I would go to the library every single day after class. I got out of class at 1 o'clock on Tuesday and Thursday after my lecture. And in this way, that every time I got out of class, I would associate studying from what I just learned that day with the actual going to class. It felt like it was a normal part of my day and routine. So I would get out of class, I would go get a cup of coffee, and then I would sit down for 3 hours, and then I would study. So I anchored the habit of studying anatomy and physiology with the actual lecture. So after I had been in class, even whenever I was tired, I would get out of class, and no matter how much tired I was, I'd go grab that cup of coffee, and I would sit down, in the exact same spot at the library every single week. I mentioned earlier to focus on smaller tasks. James Clear introduces the 2-minute rule. So you should start with a task that takes 2 minutes to complete. So an example of this would be to go through 5 of your flashcards. And another way is to take everything and break it down into smaller tasks. So if you have, let's say you have an entire chapter, you would go through and there's typically topics throughout that chapter. So for example, I'm going through inflammation and tissue repair. So the entire chapter itself is inflammation and tissue repair. A topic inside of that is acute inflammation. So you go through and mark down and write in your to-do list acute inflammation. And then you want to break that down further. And a topic within acute inflammation is vascular responses to damage. So in that way, when you break down chapter, then you have topic and then subtopic. And that way, when you check things off, you give yourself the reward and satisfaction of completing these tasks, which help build your motivation to keep going. And then you also want to make sure that you design your environment to fit what you're trying to do. So you want to have a study environment. And most of the time that's studying in the exact same spot every time you go to study so that when you sit down there, your brain is in the study mode. But for example, sometimes some people don't really have an exact spot they can study the same thing every time, such as when you're at home at your desk. Like I have my Xbox at my desk. What I do to reduce the friction of me playing Xbox instead of studying is I unplug my Xbox, so that way I create a barrier between me and playing Xbox instead of studying. But then whenever I want to actually play Xbox, I will plug it back in, I will take all of my school stuff I take my laptop off my desk, I take my textbooks off of my desk, and that's how I'll get into that mindset. So you definitely want to create barriers between each modes and each environments that you're trying to create. Well, you can always mix it up too. If you have a coffee shop that you like to go to, you can go to the library. I would try to study in the exact same study room, same table, same spot. That's what I always did. I was very particular about that. I was a little weird about it, to be honest. Also, I was very particular about the music that I listen to. Nowadays, I don't really listen to music. I find it a lot more distracting now. But when I do, I have a study playlist. There are songs that I only listen to when I study. And then you want to manage your energy as well. You really want to find when you study the most effectively. For me, that is pretty much in the morning and in the afternoon. So sometimes I will wake up earlier and I will study the hardest things first because that is when your dopamine for motivation is at its highest level. If you think of your brain as having brain points, and as you go throughout the day, you use those brain points for tasks like figuring out what to eat for lunch. But at the start of the day, you have 100 brain points. So when you're studying challenging topics, you have 100% of your points available to designate to these hard topics. But whenever you study, if you get up at 7 and then you go throughout your entire day and you don't get to study until 9 p.m. at night, you might only have 10 points left to study all this challenging, and you're tired and you've gone through your entire day. And then when you go to bed, you just forget all of it. But also another thing, when people are mentally tired and they don't want to study, they typically will just lay down. And you're not physically tired, you're just mentally tired. But you should go exercise if you're mentally tired. This way, that when there's a lot of research that shows that when you are mentally tired but you're not physically tired, such as you would not be able to take a nap, like you can be awake, there is no point in just laying down on your phone for 2 or 3 hours and hoping that all this energy magically comes back, because it won't most of the time. So when you go to the gym, there's a lot of studies that show that whenever you're working out, you're releasing the endorphins and you're waking up your nervous system and your brain and stuff. And then a lot of people who study, including myself, there are a lot of times when I don't feel like studying and I'm done. I will go to the gym. Magically, again, I can study again. I just want to thank you all for watching this video. I hope it helped some. Again, this is the book by James Clear, Atomic Habits. I think that, again, it is a wonderful read. I think that everybody should read it. I know it's a very cliche and typical book that a lot of people recommend, but it really is that good. It has definitely shaped some of the way that I go about habits and studying and exercising and work in general. For watching, please like the video if this helped, comment if you have any questions, and subscribe please, that would help me out a lot. I also have a TikTok that I will link in the bio where I post a lot more content. And then I also have a website where I have all of my notes that you can download. I will also put that in the bio. And thank you guys, have a great day.